going to, I'm here, but I'm going to put the video off, but my audio will be here, so I'll be present for all questions, and I'm here. So I don't want you guys to think I disappeared, but it's an honor, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. And if you guys do have questions or anything, feel free to put them in the chat. You can chime into the chat or ask a question. Oh, look at that picture, Jay. Ask a question in the Q&A. And now, definitely last but not least, Miss Eunice LaFate.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks again, Becca, for inviting me. When I responded, I said that art was my passion, actually the arts. I was born and raised in the beautiful island of Jamaica. And at age 7, I found my talent. I did not have the luxury of modern day art materials, so I used a stick of charcoal or a pencil to create art on the wall of my home. And at that age, we used to play school, and the elder siblings would ask, and what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, at age 7, I said I wanted to be an artist and a teacher. And sure enough, I became both. I'm retired, but I'm a lifelong educator. And I am overjoyed because this Saturday coming, I am inviting 7 children, age 7. Why 7? Because it was at age 7 I started. I'm giving them a free art class to celebrate the 7th anniversary of LaFate Gallery, which is located on Market Street. So by profession, I'm an educator, grew up to be a teacher. And then I moved here. I taught at St. Peter's Cathedral School for a year. I transitioned into banking, then into human services. I am a writer, storyteller, public speaker. I wear I'm a historian by nature too. So I'm quite rounded, I would say. But I'm an advocate for the arts. I am a big advocate, and that's why I got that award in 2014, the Governor's Award for the Arts, naming me as an advocate. And I wear that hat.
You wear it proudly. You wear it proudly, Miss Eunice.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you know, it's something I actually noticed that each of you do outside of art is teach.
Yes.
Which I didn't put that together until I just realized Miss Eunice taught too. And I was like, well, I know that you teach art though, and I shouldn't, but like, I didn't know that that was actually part of your profession at one point too. So yeah. I know you just love teaching the kids about art and giving them that chance to be free and express themselves. So I will tell you guys, I was unable to copy and paste into the chat for whatever reason. So you guys can certainly, if you'd like to see all of their biographies, go to YW website and look at events. And but I have amazing people here. So first I want to talk a little bit about, so Jay mentioned, you know, Nina Simone and others. And so we're going to kind of just go in the order that we started in, but what types of artists influenced you as you were young and kind of made an impact in your life? And I know that wasn't one of the questions, but it just came to me, Kim, sorry.
Particularly as it relates to this topic, I remember being in the 8th grade. And so I guess that year was the year that Roots came out, just in terms of a historical context. And I received a set of poetry books from a family friend. And one of those poetry books was by Paul Laurence Dunbar. One was an anthology of poetry books by many African-American artists. One was specifically Nikki Giovanni, and the other was Amira Baraka. And I love them all, was intrigued, and have performed from all of the books. But Nikki Giovanni and Amira Baraka really struck me because I, in my 8th grade year-old self, was trying to understand why they were so angry. Like what was this emotion that I was picking up from them? And so I began to ask my mother to help me understand where all that was coming, which opened the door to the civil rights movement and understanding all of those aspects. And so they were very influential for me in terms of my love of poetry and my use of poetry for social justice. The rest of the arts, you know, I guess I don't even know how I gravitated to it, because it's just been a part of me for that long.
Thank you, Kim. And Jay?
Yeah, so keeping in mind that I got involved with the arts pretty late relative to a lot of people, you know, the first music that certainly influenced me, like, was just what was played around the house. So, you know, my dad's favorite musician, hands down, I like, you know, was absolutely James Brown. So that, you know, thumping kind of soul music is just a part of me. There's no way around that. And on the flip side of that, which is kind of, it's interesting considering kind of my, you know, history, I guess, is my mom went to school. She's a classical cellist. So I had a pretty wide, you know, exposure of music, you know, literally from the time I was born. And then, you know, just as a kid, I'm a pretty, you know, just middle of the road guy when it comes to certain things. Like, I grew up, you know, listening to early hip hop, and then, you know, I grew up on everything from Snoop Dogg to anything that, you know, 90s music, you know what I mean? I'm a 90s hip hop child for sure. I listened to everything. And again, the first time that I really started to pay attention to serious music was when I was 20. And that's everything from, you know, Miles Davis to straight up classical music. So I'm really, I enjoy everything, but my basis as a musician, like the things that are just absolutely a part of me naturally is James Brown, 90s hip hop, and it's got to be that cello for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. I didn't know that about your mom. That's cool. All different kinds of influence. Miss Eunice.
Yes, well, for me, I'm defined as a folk artist, which is I create ART from the HEART. So when I started out, it was nature, the beauty of the environment, nature, that really inspired me. Then I went on to teacher's training college and learned the basics. But when I moved here, I started creating and showing my art. And the YMCA, I remember Mike Graves said, "Grandma Moses, your work looked like Grandma Moses." So I started researching who was this Grandma Moses, and I fell in love with her work. And then I researched another guy named Bill Traylor from Alabama. He was 80 years old when he started painting. He worked in a funeral home and would take cardboard boxes and charcoal at night and create art. His work now valued millions of dollars. So those were the two people. And later on, Van Gogh, yes, I love Van Gogh's style. But I'm my own person in my own way.
I love that. So you said you are a folk artist.
That means I did not receive any formal training.
Right, but you said you do art from the HEART. Was that what you said?
Meaning naturally. It
Yes,
comes
yes,
naturally.
yes, it comes from your heart. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's beautiful.
So I don't follow perspectives and accuracy. And I used to be chided when I started showing my work. Where you from? They ask me questions like, where you from? People don't have fingers. Why do you round off the hands? Where are the eyes? No, I would say that's a universal person. That would be my response. Oh, yes. It took them a long time to understand my art until I got on the Speakers Bureau. Thanks to the Delaware Humanities, I've traveled the state all the way to Fenwick Island because I'm a public speaker in folk art and culture. I explained the difference between folk art and fine art so people would understand my type of art.
You regular people, it's people. I have a couple of Eunice's pieces as well. I'm actually gonna, no, never mind, I'll talk to you offline about that. Okay, so we kind of talked about your influences throughout history and even now. tell me what you feel and what you see art doing in the space of racial justice or, you know, civil rights, or during the, you know, I mean, I don't know how much has actually changed, but what space do you see art playing in the past and now?
Anyone could go?
Yeah, because I think Kim's thinking. I know Kim.
Okay.
So yes, if you have an answer, Eunice, please go.
Yes, I'm not sure if everyone had an opportunity to read. There was an article in the News Journal when I was named one of the most influential Delawareans for 2020. And they pinpointed what I did during the racial injustice crisis with George Floyd, and how I motivated art people to create art around social justice and to just use the arts to tell a story about that. So the arts are powerful, actually the most powerful forces out there in dealing, and that's from ancient time to the present. So during that period of time, I created a whole body of work on social justice. And along with the pandemic, I have a series on coping with challenges, how I personally cope and how I helped others to cope with during the pandemic.
Wonderful. I don't know if I've seen your new pieces, so looking forward to
You'll
that.
see them for the 7th anniversary.
Sorry, Kim, are you ready, or you want me to go to Jay first?
Jay can jump in.
Yeah, I'm here. You know, I mean, so first off, kind of echoing what Miss LaFate said, you know, art is an extremely, and that's all the arts, is an extremely powerful tool. And you can use that tool as you see fit, you know. You can, like any tool, you can use it for good, you can use it for destruction. But it's a powerful tool, and it's up to the artist to determine how they use it. Me personally, like I said, you know, I'm a child of Nina Simone, Marvin Gaye, Donny Hathaway, and it's extremely important for me to make sure that even if I'm, again, writing something that is just lighthearted and fun, maybe silly, maybe even inappropriate, that I always balance out what I do with talking about what's going on now, and being a voice, you know, potentially for the voiceless, and for just giving my honest perspective on, you know, how life is, and specifically from the perspective as a Black male, and as a male, as a Black person, you know, it's important for that perspective to be heard. Now, I know part of your question was, you know, where do you see it going in that regard? And honestly, I don't know. Like, I'm aware of, you know, plenty of artists, certainly within my age, you know, bracket, and younger too, who are serious about, you know, including that component to their art in terms of talking about, you know, what's going on now and trying to use their art as a tool to create positive social change. At the same time, you know, I recognize that I'm 45. I'm not in my 20s, and that I'm not, you know, totally attached to everything that's going on. Like, I do listen to the, you know, the Power 99. I watch, like, I tried to watch some of the MTV Music Awards last night, and, you know, some of it leaves me discouraged because it seems to be a little bit unbalanced. And listen, I'm not trying to act like I don't listen to nonsense. Like, I'm not against just, you know, Nicki Minaj or whatever. Like, I can enjoy that in a certain space, but I certainly worry that there isn't enough balance in specifically the mainstream of young artists who are trying to really, you know, sort of put their neck out there in a way and just boldly say, this is wrong and this is how we change it. So I obviously want that to be more, you know, present in modern day mainstream music. And I just fundamentally feel like whatever positive changes that we see in the future, a lot of that is going to naturally come from the arts. And, you know, it's obvious that there's a lot going on right now that needs to be discussed. So I'm hoping that, you know, a significant amount of quality art comes from all areas to you know, make things better. And that's kind of all I have to say about that.
Well, real quick, Jay, because you talked all about that, but you didn't use the term that you use. And I don't know if you stole this from someone or if you made it up yourself.
Yeah, artivism. So I definitely did not coin the term. The term was coined, I think, around 92, 93, like in California. And I think it was actually a group of, it might have been Mexican artists who actually coined the term, but the idea specifically of artivism has been around, you know, the idea of using your art to create change has been around since the beginning of art. Like, you know, they might have created a term that works really well and that I love and that I use. It's perfectly fitting. But the idea of using art for change is as old as art itself. That's why, you know, if you go to, you know, maybe Afghanistan right now and talk about the Taliban, they ban the arts first. Like, that's the first thing they do is get rid of art so that the people don't have a voice. So, you know, yeah, it's something that I use that term because it makes it very clear that in a lot of what I do, we're, you know, combining activism with the arts. That's artivism, you know, artivism, art and activism. But the idea, it's almost something that you don't have to say because the arts fundamentally are used for that if you choose to. But it's a great term that I love. So yeah.
And can I follow up on what Jay just said? Or you want Kim to speak?
If Kim's going to answer now. And
okay,
then...
good.
I was just, if I were to add to the discussion on this point, would be that going back to what Mama Eunice said, when you think about art coming from the heart, then a lot of times it depends on where your heart is in terms of what you use your art as a reflection of. And I don't think that there's any main struggle that humanity has faced that has not been expressed in art in some way, because it is a way for our soul to talk. It's a way for our soul to express itself. And so when we're dealing with some of the issues that I certainly agree with Jay about what is the voice of the next generation, it's going to depend a lot on where their heart is and what we help or what we contribute to that experience for people. As it relates specifically to racism, we know that from the African and the African American diaspora, that the use of the arts has been integral in our literal survival in terms of how it has edified us, how it has been used as a tool for everything from disruption to unity to message sharing, and that it is something that's not just the paint on a paper or the notes on a paper, the words spoken, but is the power of the spirit that comes through those vehicles. And so in that sense, I believe that the arts will always be a part of provoking change and expressing the hearts and the minds of those that are in society. And in that way, it is a tool, as Jay said, where we've got to constantly say, are we going to use our tools for good or for not so good?
Thank you. And then Eunice, did you want to follow up?
Yes,
There was
I wanted to follow up on what Jay was saying. And I wanted to put it in the context of a quote from a British street artist who said, art should disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. And that brings us into the realm of the racial equity there. And I'm going to hit on corporate America because I am a product of corporate America. I worked in the banking industry for 12 years. And that statement about art should disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed, there is a tendency, and it's more peculiar to our state than other states. I've traveled this country, and when I go to other states, I see local art in business places, and in public places and in, offices, etc. There is a tendency here in the state of Delaware to be politically correct of what goes on the wall. You can't put anything that may raise any questions. So my melting pot versus a salad bowl, as much as it is inclusive, would challenge some entities out there. So we want to get to the stage where the powers that be realize that art should be inclusive and that all forms of art should be encouraged and valued. It's like the great salad bowl of cultures. There are different forms of art. So my piece may be radical. And during the pandemic and the racial injustice with George Floyd, I went at it on my canvas. I used my canvas to address social justice. And while they were marching across the world and the nation and saying, N-O justice, N-O peace, I notched it up. I created a work called K-N-O-W justice, K-N-O-W peace, because we K-N-O-W that there is no justice.
Yeah.
So,
Can I add something also? Because I had I know we.
No, you're fine. This
Yes,
is your
so,
guys' panel. I just have questions to keep it going. So, hey.
Cool. So, I just want to kind of make this point because I don't think it's always at the forefront of even artists' minds when we talk about this idea of artivism and the idea of using your art for change. Like, okay, so, I've written some really heavy material that's dark and tells like the blues, it'll make you feel sad or it'll make you angry. And I like, okay, and that is important. Like you have to express the real emotion that's there. But also it doesn't, like this idea of artivism and using your art to create change doesn't have to be based in anger and pain. Me and Miss Kim recently did a couple, like we've done 4 shows so far with this concept of Black joy. And, I'm going to kind of big up Miss Kim, honestly, but like when you see her do, and when we do that show, it's about joy. And, if you hear the song like Sounds of Blackness, you know what I'm saying? Or certain music by Earth, Wind, and Fire, that can easily be just as much of an artistic or an artivistic endeavor because it uplifts you. It literally picks you up. So it doesn't have to be a sad or an angry song. Something that lifts your spirit is equally agitating you for change. And I want to make sure that point's made.
Yeah, no, excellent point. And I think art kind of reflects how you feel in that moment. I am not an artist, but I'm saying when I appreciate art, it is, if I am sad, that's where the music will take me in that moment. And if I'm feeling joy, then that's what I'm listening to as well. So for me, that's how it is with music. That's how it is with art. I think, I don't know if everyone's like that, but I think that's part of expressing, extending a little bit of who you are in those moments. There's a question in the Q&A. So do any of the panelists have any comments about the Wilmington Urban Artist Exchange, what it is, what it's doing, and what it could become? I don't know what it is, so if no one else does, then.
I know a little because I've been engaged with it in various points from its inception, but I would not be able to articulate, its mission and that in detail. But my understanding is it's an opportunity to create artists' workspace and experiences that allow the community to partake in how artists create and contribute to the community. I know that they have done a summer enrichment program for the past 3 years where they are engaging youth artists as apprentices with other artists to develop their art form and expose them. And this year they focused on storytelling, at least as part of it, and were able to interact. They bought a internationally known storyteller to work with the students over the summer, along with other artists, which is how I've gone in there. And I know there's visions of there being an amphitheater there, so there's space for community art. And so my understanding is it's an opportunity to infuse the community with artists that are from the community and that give to the community and share and develop their art form. So I just see a lot of possibilities in terms of what it can become as that type of a hub. I don't know if Jay or Mama Eunice have any more to add to that.
The perspective that I'm looking at it, and I'm happy they're involving the youth and are engaging them in creativity. I had an experience back in the 90s where I worked with youth, and I educated them on the value of art, that their skills value money, and that the arts can keep them engaged and out of destructive behavior. So the Urban Art Project does have a very positive impact. And going forward, I can see it doing a lot because, again, the economic, since the word equity is a part of our discussion, we need to address that. We, as artists, unfortunately, we don't enjoy the fruits of our labor, while we're around. And that's not even fair to say the least. So we want to let people know the value of art, and that art is more than beauty on the wall, it is wealth. And we start teaching it at a young age. I had a little boy, age 6 years, I was doing an after school care program, and I gave my background and that I'm now famous. And the little boy, once I set them to work, he created his art on canvas, and every 10 minutes he would come up to me and say, "Am I famous yet? Am I famous yet?" And I sat him down. I said, "Excellent, you're doing great. And one of these days you'll be famous." And I walked him through explaining it was a teachable moment, that fame doesn't come overnight, that you have to work a long time to become famous, but you have to be at it. Meaning, I didn't use diligent, he was 6 years old, but you constantly work on it and improve on it. And yes, you'll get there.
I love that story. I love that. That was great. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, I'm to Jay's point about the MTV Music Awards. I wonder if the influence of like white individuals kind of running that space makes artists have to perform a certain way, as opposed to, lifting up. And I guess even back then, Nina Simone lifting up the like the artivism kind of music that's out there. That's not really a question, it's a comment. So sorry.
That's right.
I think that the reality is that what we create comes from out of who we are. And as we as a society are becoming, I don't know, it's almost like a dichotomy. On one hand, there's this vast freedom of thought, where we're exploring liberty. So if you think about specifically the thoughts of women embracing their sexuality in ways that are not hampered by sexism, in the same way that we're here to talk about racism. And then you have people who want to then interpret that and walk fully in it. Then you deal with, do I agree with their expression of liberty? Do I think that that's where it all is? Does it have to run its course? And I don't have an answer. I think I feel more like a social anthropologist in that universe, where I'm just trying to understand where is it coming from, and how does that inform us in terms of what we do we do next, and I think that, even as that relates to the concept of equity, is when you start seeking equity, when you start seeking justice, and the pendulum starts swinging in another direction, you can't control the outcome. You can influence the direction that things begin to move in, but when you ask for freedom and you want liberty, then how it becomes expressed becomes its own next step, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that
Yes.
makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and further to Ms. Kim's point, specifically about, corporations and MTV and all that kind of stuff. Like, listen, I mean, there's two pieces. Like, there's music, and then there's the music business. There's art, and there's art business. And the people who run MTV, quite frankly, and I don't think they have any necessary responsibility to. I'd love for them to be super moral and want to have a balance of, of the raunchy with being conscious, but they're not thinking that way. They're business people. They're thinking, how can I make the most money? They're not necessarily at all concerned about morality. And that's just, they're interested in money. They're business people, and I get it. And that's the thing, that you're always going to deal with it. And that's from my end, and this is part of a bigger discussion, why it's important to have, like, say, Miss LaFate, a folk artist who is just a part of the community, because having her and Miss Kim stand in front of parts of our community, doing what they do in their way, it can be just as influential. So I'm happy to have a McDonald's double cheeseburger every now and then, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I can't eat that all the time. And music and art is the same way. It's just that balance. And you can't rely on big business to feed you good art food. You can't. It's never going to work out that way. So that's where your community matters.
Yeah, and I think that
Go ahead.
I was going to say that what popped into my head, and this relates to equity both from a race and a gender space. There's a song that I used to love to, it's a party song from my young years, and I don't like singing it anymore because there's a line in there that I take exception to, and I don't want to call an artist out tonight, so I won't. I'll leave that alone. But my point is, the line in the song is a derogatory statement about a woman, and it's a derogatory statement about a woman that is based on her reactions to sexist behavior. And so there's this equity issue that when the MTVs and the whomever else is in the world are only focused on the bottom dollar, and it compels an artist who doesn't have, for whatever reason, the foundation to make another choice, to have to then grapple with their own actions and their own behaviors. And so in that case, not only does it affect their sense of equity about how they can present themselves, but then their voice, whether it's their painting voice or their singing voice or their instrumental voice, then influences another generation of people, because they consume that twisted message or that unbalanced message. So I would probably debate a little bit with Jay on whether those places have social responsibility or not. But yeah, that's what I would throw in on that.
Yeah, my perspective is taking it to education, and how are we going to educate our citizens to appreciate or to value the arts? And that's where equity comes into play, because when you compare the work of a Black artist, I'm going to use Edward Loper, the late Edward Loper, as an example. That man struggled for many, many years to gain recognition. And once he was gone, yes, his work was there. Whereas other artists, and I'm not going to name, just going to use the term, the Brandywine artists. They didn't have that struggle to get that recognition and to have their work collected. But when Loper passed away, they were gravitating to hawk up his work, to put in museum, etc. That's not fair. You know, give the artists their flowers while they're here. Recognize them, value, and give them equity while they're here. That's my perspective. And start with the youth. And that's why I love that urban project, because we should be putting education as the center of the projects that we're doing with our youth and explaining to them, like I did at Job Corps. I told the guys that you can make, I used to use the term clean money from your art and use your art to make money, but they have to be able to know that somebody's going to be buying their product. Right. And that there is going to be a market for it, and that the competition is going to be even across the board, which is not and may never be.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna, that one of my questions was, how do we feel about the challenge and the equity in pay when it comes to Black artists?
Wow.
You know, I took for granted, I'm going to be very honest now, I've learned the error of my ways, just in general about artists and the asking them to volunteer, right? Because to me, like, that's time, right? But my time isn't necessarily what's valuable. Like art, the time spent in the art process is valuable. Like it's what Eunice lives off of, right? Like, so how do the three of you feel about how that's kind of come up? And do you set your boundaries for that? Or do you just kind of express yourself and that's not necessarily a stream of income because that's just, you know, how you express yourself?
Well, my experience has been varied as an arts administrator and being responsible for programming and or placing other artists in work. You definitely encounter this concept that, you know, that people automatically assume that the work is going to be done for free or for a donation, and don't necessarily view the artists as business people, and that their business is themselves, you know, and the work that goes into it, what they've invested in the development of their craft, what's invested in preparing for for an event. And I think that the first equity issue is around artist, period. And then it is, you know, it's the intersectionality of race and art and how we attach value. You know, we look at certain art forms, you know, even when you're talking about hip hop as an art form versus ballet, you know, and it took a while before people recognized that hip hop has its own codified sets of movement. And I'm sure that if you were having a concert, what people think about what a hip hop artist would be paid versus a ballet dancer, a ballet company may have some differences that are in there. And I think that the equity issue often comes, or I've experienced it, because we're often in positions where we're sharing our art with the underserved. So there's almost an expectation, because you're serving those who have less access, that you should be willing to do what you do for free, without necessarily understanding the role of the arts really in creating economy all around us, and how important that is.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm just going to go to Jay because I think were you trying to chime in, Jay?
No, but I can jump in now because I have stuff to say about it.
Yeah, I thought that you would. I thought that you would. But if you want to, Eunice or Jay, whichever one wants to go first.
Go, Jay.
Yeah. So as soon as you brought up the subject of pay, the first person that jumped in my mind, I wish she was, you know, I wish you could just jump in right now, is Tahira, because she is extremely, she is great at valuing herself and making sure that she gets what she deserves. And quite frankly, I'm the worst. And so I really follow her as much as I can. You know, I'm not going to say exactly how she handles everything, but I really feel like she's almost an expert on making sure that she gets paid her worth. And it is difficult because, you know, especially as someone who works in the community, who works with kids, you know, I'm always, and as someone who's generally a fortunate person, I'm often like, yeah, I got you. Yeah, fine. But I've gotten better at that. And the reason I've gotten better at that is, number one, because I follow Tahira, and number two, because I recognize that like I'm a part of the community. So if I'm like, I'll do it for free, then I set the expectation for everybody else, and that's not cool. Like, I'm literally lowering the market for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Now get through that tunnel, Jay. We're going to come back to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a valid point. Is
By
that
being
you
like,
are.
yeah, I got you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hold on. Can you still hear me?
No, we
Am
can
I
hear
there?
you now. You're back.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. So I'm literally,
Never mind. No, you're
so
not.
I'm literally, you know, yeah, so I'm literally.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Sometimes when I say I'll do it for, oh, man,
Hey, Jay.
Hold on.
That's okay. It might be where you are right now. That's all right. I'm going to let Miss Eunice answer. You drive another 2 miles and we'll see. Go ahead, Miss Eunice.
Yes, everyone knows me as a very charitable person. I give. I've been giving the last 39 years I've been living here. I've given back a lot. And then when I go out to see if I can get some funding to help the underserved children, first question, are you a nonprofit? Well, my answer is,
hey, I'm gonna be up in a second. I'll be up in 1 second. I love you. I'm glad to see you. I'll be up in 1 second.
Go ahead, Eunice. That's
yes,
his kids.
Then when I ask for funding to help provide free art classes for children, which most times it comes out of my pocket, but I think, you know, companies should help. And then the question is, are you a non-for-profit? No, I'm not. On the books, I always say on the books I'm not, but in practice I am, because the amount I give back to the community. And I want to thank a few corporations who have been very generous out there and have helped me during the height of the pandemic, when children were freaking out with school, homeschooling and online, and it was very stressful. I wanted to get rid of the stress for them. And I was able to get funding from 2 places. I'm going to name them, give credit to credit. The Buccini Pauline Group and the Kenny Family Foundation. They provided funding for 40 children who, in groups of 5 during the, and this was June, the pandemic, remember it was March, and June I was trying to help the stress level of those children because I was hearing it around, and I was able to provide classes for those children free. But more companies should be rallying up to do that.
Well, I think, go ahead, sorry.
Yes, and it's very frustrating when I ask and I provide statistics too, and what is going to be used for, etc. Then they still decline it because I'm not a non-for-profit.
Right. Yeah, because they can't write it off.
Well, I think that that's a good example of a potential education fact for other other artists, and for things like that, where they might be able to partner with a nonprofit to apply for grants. So I'm saying that to say that I think part of the equity conversation is making sure that independent artists are informed about how they can navigate certain systems, like around getting grants and what's required to get grants, what do you need in place, and when you don't have necessarily the when I say capacity, I'm talking about capacity, like the infrastructure behind you, the ins and outs of what that process is to partner with a nonprofit that you can then do your work under that umbrella. So you still accomplish the work that you want to do, and you have that win-win situation with another potential organization. And a lot of times artists aren't aware that those are potential opportunities.
Mhm.
Yeah. Jay, did you want to, I don't know if, did you want to pick back up where you were? You were in and out a little bit, so.
Yeah, am I clear now?
Yeah, you're clear now.
All right, cool. Now, I don't know what exactly you guys heard, but the other point, and I think I might have missed part of what you guys said, but the only other thing I wanted to add to what I was saying is, you know, it's important for me and for any artist to kind of understand who they're doing whatever they're doing for. Like if a certain organization, if I know that they don't have a budget, like if I know they really don't have anything, you know, I'll see what I have going on in my schedule, and if it's possible and I feel it's a really worthy cause, you know, I'll be like, I got you. But some organizations have money and they're tight with it when they shouldn't be, and you have to know who you're working with. Like if I know, you know, if I know that you have the means to pay me properly, it's then my responsibility to also say, no, I'm not going to sit at your function for 3 hours for $75. I'm not doing it. Like you're going to have to pay me more than that. So, right.
You're muted, Rebecca.
Wow, I muted myself. I always happen to see Jay for free.
Yeah.
I hope the parks pay you though, right?
Yes,
Good,
absolutely.
good.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. You know, like they have a budget. So if you see me doing that, it's because they came correct. You know what I mean? Like they're not, and because there are times when you're blatantly disrespected, and it's really hard for a new artist to be like, you know what, fine. And I understand why you would sometimes take that $50 for an hour, but it's hard if you're just trying to get your foot in the door and kind of become a part of the community, to not make that decision. But especially from my end, like people know me, I'm not going to just take that. You got to pay me properly. And it's not because I'm greedy, because quite frankly, even though I'm being paid what I'm worth, it's not like I'm paying my car off. You know what I mean? Like I'm just getting just enough to get by.
Right.
Yeah. I may I say something?
Sure.
In my experience in teaching, and since February, thanks to the High Mark company, Reverend Benjamin, myself, and Aaron, drummer, keyboard, and I'm the visual art. We've been taking the arts to the community, and it has been just very, very powerful out there that we are able to do that. And we are able to do it because there is a grant in place. So we need more funding.
So that's exactly what I was going to say, is a couple things. So because we have a couple minutes left, and then you guys, if you have questions out there, the last 15 minutes are for questions, but we might go a little bit over on this. So when it comes to funding, a lot of that comes from, obviously, you apply for grants. There's a lot of grants out there for art. However, I'm sure they're super competitive. I mean, their grants are also complicated to fill out.
May I say something on that?
Sure.
Grants, if you're not careful, the grant could become a DEBT, that's debt trap. And I fell in that debt trap, getting a grant, which was later converted to a loan. So we have to be also careful out there. Sometimes those grants carry some strings that will tangle you financially.
Right. And so how do we move in that direction to make grant funding more equitable for Black and brown people in the arts? How much influence do you think the board has on that, and how can we change that structure a little bit? I know I kind of pushed two questions together, but we don't have a lot of time. So
you got a hand raised, and she would be well versed on this topic. I don't know if you can buzz her in.
I can buzz her in. I'll buzz her in, Miss Ray. I absolutely will buzz her in. Miss Ray,
I'm driving, and that was a mistake.
Oh.
But I'm enjoying the conversation. What the question was about? What?
was about grant funding and boards and how we can make those more equitable for Black and brown people in the arts field.
Yeah, well, the conversation was post the murder of George Floyd was elevated by Ariana Harley, and he wrote a very direct, courageous article about philanthropy, and he's coming from an arts equity, set of experiences of the inequities in philanthropy and other aspects of resources. How philanthropy in Delaware is so white, and so that's a session in and of itself. But this
It is.
we need to have that conversation in much more open spaces with decision makers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So that's what I would say. After he Arion, he's the
I know. Yeah.
operations director. Your listening audience may not know of the
Oh, yes.
choir school of Delaware. He has a perspective that's bigger than Delaware. He's worked in other parts of the country. After a couple of months, the conversation died down, and it was never really a broader range of voices in the conversation. So I think that's very crucial to re-engage those conversations and to really insist on action.
Mm-hmm.
Accountability.
More than talk. Well, I accountability is when you are expecting people to do what they espouse that they're going to do. I'm an advocate for responsibility.
Mm. Yeah. That's
Where it's an internal moral compass that guides your actions and your decision making.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I'm continuing to listen. Kim knows I'm a caregiver and I'm late for my job. But
one of the many, and for those that you don't know, Miss Ray, she's an amazing artist herself, and maybe we'll have her on next time too.
And just to follow up with what Ray was saying is that in terms of moving it to action, I've been in a number of conversations at a number of tables where we've talked about educating funders to better align their funding priorities and how they determine what qualifies as a qualified funder, a qualified recipient, so that they can expand their breadth. And the conversation always sounds good, but I don't know that enough traction has happened that the conversations actually ever make it to the funders.
And may I say something about that? When I worked in corporate America, I was a member of the CRA, that the Community Reinvestment Act. And when the requests came in, I was the only Black on the committee. And the requests were coming from inner city, and they would pass them on to me. And I loved it, because I would say, fund it, and give justification, because I had the pulse of the community in my hands, and I was able to tell them, and they listened and they funded. But hadn't I been on the committee, then a lot of those would have been turned down.
Yeah, that was, I think, was my second question is, I think, does the change have to kind of come from the structure?
Yes.
The beyond structure, right? Like the board structure, like we need to make sure that voice is actually in the room, because I think when there's outside voices trying to tell people who don't get it, or people who don't have those experiences, it does become talk and not action. Because it's more of an intellectual thing, right? It's more like, oh, I get what you're saying, but it's not like someone's there the next week saying, no, remember, this is what we're, it's just yeah, you're right. We really need to invest in the community. We really need to invest in the arts. And then it's,
And you know something, Becca, we are at an important juncture where we need to take advantage of it. Years ago, the corporate would talk about diversity and inclusion. In the last 2 years, they inserted the word equity. Equity was never there. And equity is a pivot on which diversity and inclusion turns. So
Mhm.
now that equity is in that, and it's now DEI. That's a big thing in the corporate world. We need to leverage that opportunity.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I also am kind of guessing, because I'm not part of these boards, but I'm guessing that a part of the problem is also, the reason that you need to get a more diverse people, more diversity on these boards is because a lot of the people who are on these boards literally aren't connected to the community, in terms of the real demographics. Like they literally have no idea who a person is. And I'm going to throw out a local name just because everyone knows him within this circle. But, if you go back a few years ago, it's possible that the people who are working for a big bank might not have any idea who Richard Raw is, which is absurd from our end.
Mhm.
Like, we all know him, but like, if they don't have any idea, like if there's no one to connect those dots and to create a bridge, they're just on a complete island. They literally don't know. So there's pieces to it. And I think that's a part of it.
Yeah,
So education is the key. We need to educate them.
yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
A question that was in the chat earlier that someone asked about, Tracy asked, what do you say to those who say the arts are not important or frivolous? And I used to always have an interesting response to that when people act as if the arts are the icing on the cake. And I always say that the arts are the vegetables, the arts are the source of the vitamins. And you have to have that conversation, that it's a part of a balanced, healthy diet. It's not the dessert that you finish a good meal with. It's what should be embedded throughout. And you can only do it by continuing to enforce that point.
That's a very good concept, Miss Kim. That is a great concept.
And from my end,
Eunice is going to paint something about it. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Jay.
But to that point, and that is part of why it's really important for artists to take themselves and their crafts seriously. Because if you're out there, there's levels. I'm sorry, there's quality. And if you're out there singing off key and not, and the melody isn't quality, it's like, well, why would I pay you for this? You have to treat your craft seriously, because when you really experience impactful, powerful art, you get it. But if you go to just some willy-nilly bar and see somebody just with no real oomph behind it, they're just doing a whole bunch of covers for $100. Well, they think that that's art, but no. You need to come to, you got to come see Gregory Porter. You got to experience that. Then you're like, oh, that is what it is. You got to see, it at a certain quality before you can really understand the value of it, And I'm not saying that, the person at a random bar isn't valuable. I'm not saying that.
Right.
Like, I want to be clear because someone will get upset. But like, it's really important that, quality is part of it, because we have to be our own best advocates. You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's all you got.
You know where that begins? At the earliest stage, at the root. When I teach the young kids, there is always a lesson on value and quality. The value of your work and the quality of your work. It has to be planted. You have to nurture it and it will grow. But if people just want to, it's like the little boy who thought he would be famous in that evening.
Yeah. People have to remember that it's a craft. Like, when you learn how to build a house, if you build your house and it falls apart, nobody's going to buy your house. Why would I buy that house? Art is the same way. I don't care how you build your mastery. There's different pathways, but it's important that you build it, because that's how you say that this is valuable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Earlier, someone mentioned, and they used the word talent, right? And what came to me, we were talking about how much you get paid. What instantaneously came to me was sports and how much we pay for talent in that field.
Yeah, that's a whole big conversation.
No. My point was, we all have gifts, is kind of what I'm saying. We all have gifts. And some of our gifts are valued more by society than others. I'm not trying, it's
Yeah.
It's how it is.
No,
but-
that's true.
Yeah, and it's really, you know, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. Like I think you kind of just made that clear, Jay. You were saying basically, you know, that it's quality too, right? Like, and
Yes.
maybe the guy, and I don't want to get yelled at either, but maybe the guy at the bar, maybe he tried for a really long time and never quite took off, and so he can sing, he can do cover songs, and that's it for him. You know, he gets paid $150 for his gig or whatever, and that's his Friday night, and he works at the bank during the week or whatever. And
Yeah,
so
and that's great.
yeah, I think sometimes
Mhm.
people treat art, I shouldn't say sometimes, people treat art as if it's a hobby.
Yes, there you go.
And
Mhm.
that's okay too. That's fine. Be a hobbyist. But like, I would never say don't make it a hobby. If that's your hobby and you're just happy, if your goal is to just be at a bar in Trolley Square, I'm not mad at that. I'm not
Right.
knocking that. Like, there's nothing wrong with I'm a hobbyist in several different ways. Like,
Yeah.
I have a lot of hobbies. I'm not good at them and I don't feel bad about that. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a professional, but if
Right.
you're a professional and you're
Mhm.
seriously saying that I want to do this as a real profession, then you have an obligation to meet a certain standard.
On
Yeah.
that subject, I teach a course in my gallery, The Art of Business, how to transform a hobby into a business. And I have the 12 steps that they go through to learn how to make that transition. Actually, my art was a hobby. When they stressed me out in corporate America, I would go home and put it on my canvas.
Right.
So it grew from a hobby into a business, and it's been around for 29 years.
Yeah. If you want to play pickup basketball, play pickup basketball every night. Do it all you want. Have fun. But if you want to play in the NBA, you're going to have to be out there every night shooting foul shot after foul shot after foul shot. That's it.
Right.
You know?
And I, you know, they're different. I wasn't trying to say that the art, but I was just trying to think of like that word talent kind of, and I think Kim used it, just triggered me like that, how much, you know, depending on what we value as talent. And the great thing about the arts is there's such a variety, right? So I will tell you, when putting this panel together, I was like, you guys don't even represent all the arts, right? I mean, like, you know,
No.
Music, spoken word,
Drama.
painter, right? Like, you know, Jay, you even do talk show. Part of that's art, right? Like, I know it's media, but you know, there's all kinds of art, and you know, we can't even cover everything. So it's like, you know, so anyway, does anybody have any questions? Tracy had made a really good statement in here, and I love it. She said, I have always thought that artists are artists because they can't not be artists. That's pretty good.
I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Mhm,
You know?
mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean,
But it's hard to discern sometimes, because you have some people who, like, I don't want to listen, I'm a child of hip hop, so please no one say that I'm talking bad about hip hop music. But you do have people who say, I want to be a rapper because they think it's a way to make a lot.
yes.
That's right.
I love how he froze in that position right there. You're frozen. Okay, so we have I'm sorry. So Jay right there.
He'll be back. He'll be back.
He will.
Yeah.
Jay, you probably have to leave and come back. I don't know if you can hear us, but we've got 5 minutes. So if you guys kind of want to just kind of close out, you know, how did you feel about the conversation? Did we not get something covered that you might go over? Go ahead, Eunice. You can go first.
The foundation is going to be education, and the source of racial equity in the arts. We have to educate people. We have to come up with a platform, and we have to document, and we must provide training to get people to understand, to value, and to be inclusive when it comes to the arts.
Yeah, Eunice, that sounds like a nonprofit to me.
Yeah.
Educating the public about the arts is pretty nonprofit to me. Like,
Yes.
so.
And before I close out, I just want to say that on the 24th of September, I'll be celebrating the 7th anniversary of LaFate Gallery as a storefront. It's been around for 29 years, but it's a storefront for 7 years. It grew out of grief. And I call it rebounding from grief to growth. And for this anniversary, the theme is from a gallery to a vision center, because it's more than a gallery.
Congratulations
Thank
and
you.
celebration. Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
what date is that again? I'm sorry, the
It is a
27th?
Saturday, and it will be from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. on
27th.
Saturday, the last Saturday in September.
Okay. Great. So,
I feel like
I've been posting about it.
okay.
this conversation is like so many of the iceberg graphics. You know, I feel like we just began to scratch the very tip of the surface. And that's not because we weren't proficient in discussion. It's just so much to be said, and there's so much involved even in laying the groundwork to move the depth of the conversation. And so I think it's just something we have to keep in action in order to see headway made in the areas of equity.
Yeah, Jay, I just gave you a spot on your show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know why I got kicked off, but I'm back. So yeah, but thank you.
Wait, I don't even know what that's all about, but I was just gonna say.
No. I mean, I got pushed out of the meeting. Yeah, I got pushed out of the meeting. I don't know what happened to my connection. That's all.
I was like, you got kicked off your talk show?
Yeah, Naj fired me. She said, get out.
Well,
She probably does that 10 times a day.
for anyone who doesn't know, and he's frozen again. Oh my goodness, you have bad internet is what it is, connection. You probably use Wi-Fi in the city because that's the only option to Comcast. Oh, now you're back again. Yeah. So for those that don't know, so Eunice just kind of gave a plug. Jay, why don't you tell people how they can find you and Naj?
Oh yeah, so just go to Naj and Jay. We're on Facebook, on YouTube, on IG, but NADJ, Naj, the letter N, and then my name Jay. So Naj and Jay, JEA. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like a talk show, and they are perfect together. They balance each other out very entertainingly. It does not really matter the topic. I mean, they're good topics. I don't mean to say that, but like, you know, they have good chemistry in that way. I love it.
And we try to balance. We try to balance all of the raunchy stuff with, you know, the serious stuff. We try to keep it balanced.
Yeah, you do. You do a good job of that at covering. It's kind of like music we talked about, right? You try to get to that, like that pop culture conversation, as well as like, let's talk about city gun violence, right? Like
all of the things.
Yeah,
all of the things.
So, Kim, I don't know if you have anything in particular to promote other than your wonderful self.
I am looking forward to some potential opportunities coming up. I don't have any details about the use of story as a way of healing and personal growth. And so look forward to hearing more about that. Yeah.
Please include me in that. I'm a storyteller.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I think I will say, Kim, we'll talk about this, but that's kind of where the conversations that we've been doing are really going to a storytelling base. So, well, thank you guys for joining us. Seriously, 3 amazing Wilmingtonians, and actually, Kim, you live outside of Wilmington, don't you? But you're Wilmingtonian, right? No, you live in Wilmington.
I live in Wilmington.
Okay, all right. You work outside now.
Yes.
Yes. So, yeah, thank you guys all for being here. Thank you to the audience. Let me see if there's people probably just saying thank you. Yes, everyone's saying thank you. Great dialogue. Yeah. So again, appreciate your guys' time. This will be, for those who have seen it and haven't had time, it'll be on YW's website, probably in about 24 hours if you want to go back and watch it. And I think, like Kim said, it's tip of the iceberg. So, all right.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you, and thanks for the invitation.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Good
Take
night.
care.
Okay.
Now, Jay, go play with your kids.
Right.